Right. While everyone is coming in, allow me to do some house rules and some welcomes and greetings. First of all, welcome to our online webinar titled Unlocking Space for an Inclusive Economy. During this webinar, we're going to go through the overview of the Meanwhile Oxfordshire program, and then we're going to have a panel discussion, and then we have a Q&A. Just for the Q&A, there is a button at the bottom of the screen that says Q&A. So for anyone attending, feel free to ask a question, and it'll go straight to the panelists, and they'll be able to answer the questions that are aimed at them. And then finally, we'll have a closing remarks from the panelists. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this webinar, take notes, and hopefully you learn as much as we did during the program. We'll give it one more minute. I can see some people in the waiting area. And then we shall begin. And I'll pass it over to Andy Edwards, who was a program lead and the co-founder of Meanwhile Space Oxford. And for any panelists, if you're not speaking, please put your mic on mute. That'll be very helpful. Thank you. On to you, Andy.
Amazing. Thanks, Ray. Yeah, well, as Ray said, very warm welcome. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. I'm Andy Edwards. I'm co-founder and executive director at Meanwhile Space Oxford. We're really delighted to have the opportunity to share some of the learning and the impact so far from the Meanwhile in Oxfordshire programme. We published a report just last month, and we had the opportunity to launch it at a social change festival called Marmalade. And this is an opportunity now to share that learning online with a wider audience. I'm also delighted to be joined by a range of panelists who kind of represent the full ecosystem and kind of different parts of the programme. So we have Taiwo and Rana, who are residents in some of our core hub spaces. We also have Neil Wild from Wild Property Consulting, who is a key strategic and delivery partner. Alex Louis, part of the MakeSpace team and involved in some of the delivery on the ground as community development manager. And Bex Trevelyan and Emily Burnwin, who were part of the strategic advisory board and have been key collaborators in helping steward us through this kind of development and growth process. So after I've given a bit of a summary and an overview of the programme, we'll hand over to those panelists and hear their contributions and their experiences and reflections on the programme as well. So I'll see if I can kick off by sharing a few slides with you to start off with. And so let me know, give me a thumbs up if it's looking good in terms of being able to see the slides. Yeah, fantastic. So this is a kind of image that we represented in the report to kind of give a real solid overview of what we've achieved and the story. We worked quite hard to try and pack it into one image, and I'm gonna try and sort of unpack it for you now. So for those who are perhaps a bit less familiar with MakeSpace, coming to the organisation for the first time, we're a relatively young organisation. We were set up by a group of architects, artists, makers and non-profits who were living and working in Oxford and essentially struggling to find space for their own operations and their organisation, effectively being priced out. And at MakeSpace, we kind of talk about our agenda as this idea of spatial justice, which put simply to us means we believe everyone has the right to safe, secure and affordable spaces in which to live and work and organise and develop a sense of belonging in their locality. And we use this idea of meanwhile or temporary use, temporary occupation of buildings as a lever to unlock spaces and then build towards community ownership. And we've been working with some amazing local organisations to kind of create the change that we want to see in the world, unlocking one empty building at a time. So our story begins here in Oxford. But through the Meanwhile in Oxfordshire programme, we've of course expanded to work county-wide, and we've been working with a wonderful range of partners, both Oxford and Oxfordshire based. And for many, Oxford is kind of associated with terrific wealth and prestige, and often most synonymous with the wonderful urban fabric that we have here, the universities. But of course, we also know it's home to it's one of the least affordable cities in the UK in which to live and work. It's also one of the most unequal. And the same can be said for the wider county, where you have areas experiencing quite severe deprivation and neglect, alongside those that are home to the richest 0.1%. Now, the county is also home to a fantastic and fertile network of social enterprises and community groups that are tackling a broad range of social justice issues. But many of those groups, just like we were when we were setting out to establish Make Space, are being priced out of accessing space in their local areas. And that's despite the huge numbers of vacant buildings that we see up and down our high streets. So Oxford and surrounding market towns, they're experiencing a range of different pressures, and it's not unlike many urban centres and towns up and down the country, from repeated market failures and austerity to antiquated taxation laws and spiralling land prices. And there's been a steady decline in urban centres over recent years, and this is most often characterised by rising vacancy numbers, a loss of community spaces, and a loss of independent trading space as well. In February 2021, at the time the programme launched, there was this real fear that COVID-19 would cause a further spiralling in vacancy numbers. And during the programme, we identified over 350 vacant buildings, and yet we knew that was somewhat the tip of the iceberg. There were many more out there that we weren't able to get to. So what was Meanwhile in Oxfordshire all about? Well, it was curated by Oxfordshire's 4 district councils, led by Oxford City Council, who together secured £1.9 million of capital grant from the Oxfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership. And that was via MHCLG's central government's Getting Building Fund. Make Space responded to a proposal with a bid to centre equity, community enterprise and social impact, and to use Meanwhile as this idea of a catalyst to create wider systemic change. We were tasked with investing the capital grant and refurbishing vacant buildings, bringing them back into use, but we also had to kind of scale and adapt our model at the same time, working from just initially a small team of 3 up to 15 members of staff as we are today. The programme's ambitions were somewhat unprecedented. We had to deliver the whole programme within 18 months, and that was at a time of huge uncertainty during the pandemic. Crucially, we also raised a further 500,000 in match funding, and that was to develop a community team who would be able to sort of ensure a strong legacy from the programme and really help build the connectivity of organisations going into different spaces. Programme's ambitions were extremely broad, but can be distilled into these sort of 5 main areas. Now, the first one is around that idea of trying to tackle rising vacancy numbers. So bringing up to 30 buildings back into use that were previously vacant right the way across the county, with a spread for all 5 districts. But we also wanted to bring people back to the high street and do that safely. So this was at the time when we were just emerging out of various different lockdowns, and wanted to ensure that people could return, but do that in ways that would enable them to feel safe and secure. And so we did that by sort of diversifying various different uses and the types of spaces that we were bringing back as well. We wanted to lower barriers to access, so really increase the affordability and enable kind of greater diversity of uses, spaces and models. The fourth was about creating jobs, and that's quality jobs, so all of them living wage, with a real focus on startup or emerging purpose-driven enterprises. And then finally, and kind of most excitingly, the thing that underpins it all for us was this idea of facilitating a more inclusive economy, which the Centre for Local Economic Strategy defined as an economy that functions naturally to produce social, economic and environmental justice for all, which is a tantalising prospect, I'm sure you'll agree. So just to give you a bit of a flavour for how we approached it, we wanted to come at this programme thinking differently about how you unlock space. So rather than being led by accountants, agents and markets in the way that we develop, we wanted to bring a sort of design thinking and placemaking approach. And we did that by working with as wide a range of stakeholders as possible. So we assembled a partnership that developed a series of place-based strategies. And our first challenge was really to try and map and identify where on earth these empty buildings were, who owned them, how do we unlock them. We worked very closely with Neil Wild and other local organisations to walk the streets and really try and get an understanding of the local area and where these buildings were that we wanted to unlock. And then we worked with some terrific partners, our architects, Transition by Design, community researchers and other local artists and organisations to initiate a sort of spatial design process and carry out community engagement to understand what was needed in those local areas. We were then linking with and working with local contractors to carry out the refurbishment, and that would range from very light touch cosmetic fit outs, some health and safety improvements, right the way through to whole scale building refurbishments and low energy retrofit. And then finally, we matched organisations with those different spaces, offering rent support where we needed to ensure that those that were typically excluded from space could find their home. And this image looks wonderfully linear and intuitive in many ways, but the process was anything but. To be honest, we were often running multiple processes in parallel, learning in action as we went along, iterating, and having to be as agile as we possibly could in changing circumstances. So to give you a glimpse of some of the spaces we've reanimated, working across 7 different towns, we've unlocked 20 solo or kind of micro-site solo resident spaces. And these are most commonly sort of vacant shops, but some light industrial and office buildings as well. We've also unlocked 6 multi-resident hub spaces in key urban areas, and that's an opportunity to really concentrate energy and sort of deepen our impact by unlocking buildings at a greater scale. And that ranged from Oxford City to Didcot, Abingdon, Wantage, Chipping, Norton. And these spaces ranged from community cafes, artists and maker studios, retail spaces, theatre and dance studios, co-working spaces, and event spaces. So the headlines are: we unlocked 28 buildings that were formerly vacant. That's over 3,500 square meters that have been brought back into use on leases ranging from 12 months to 10 years. And we've also been working on the potential for negotiating community asset transfers to unlock a longer lease as well. We've created or supported 200 jobs and growing so far, and supported over 100 organisations into space, and that's rising. But we know the numbers only really tell part of the story, and what we really care about, what really makes places thrive and brings them to life, is the fantastic organisations and residents who've been reanimating the buildings with us. And so I'll focus in on just a few examples, and then we'll hear from more of the residents that we have on the call today. So to begin with, Lula Kinneard, who has set up Lula's Ethiopian and Eritrean cuisine, a restaurant in central Oxford that was built around a new community hub. Now, Lula had been trading in markets in central Oxford for years, always dreaming of her own space, but commercial property prices have made that all but a dream. And we worked closely with Lula to design how her restaurant could operate alongside other organisations in a multi-resident hub space. And in the last 2 years, she's claimed the top spot on TripAdvisor for restaurants in Oxford. She's also just received the Gold Award for global food offerings in Oxford as part of Ox in a Box Food Awards, which is fantastic. That happened just last week, and she's in the process of expanding her kitchen in order to respond to the growing demand for the terrific food and offerings that she has. Now, Lula works and is now situated alongside the Oxford Poetry Library, which was established by Phoebe Nicholson. And Phoebe had this vision of bringing poetry, reading, creative writing and performance to local residents of all backgrounds, and has for many years been seen as a familiar sight, whizzing around Oxford in a fantastic cargo bike, popping up at events and sharing a range of different literature for adults, for young people, with all different parts of the community. And now, thanks to the Meanwhile in Oxfordshire programme, she's been able to set up and establish the Poetry Library with a permanent space in the same hub space alongside Lula in the community works in central Oxford, and now runs regular events and open mic nights and has a fantastic following. And then finally, we have Dr. Diane Regisford, who was formerly the Make Space Community Wealth Building Advocate, who'd been working with a range of different organisations in Blackbird Leys, one of the most under-resourced and under-invested estates in Oxford, supporting new and emerging businesses who wanted to develop around the idea of a community wealth building strategy. And she worked with groups to unlock a formerly empty community centre office, and turning it into an oasis space that was welcoming to various different parts of the local community. So little over a year and a half ago, we managed to unlock all of these buildings, spend down on the capital grant. But since then, the real work has been starting. We've been asking ourselves some really big ticket questions that we'll try and cover some of in this session around, how do you build community in these spaces once they're unlocked? How do you create the opportunities for collaboration, and how do you foster the conditions for mutual support and solidarity? And we're just starting to establish what that looks like with the help of the wonderful partners that we've been working with and the wonderful and growing resident community. And so I'll pause there. I'm mindful took up a little bit more time than I wanted to, and so let's now transition across to the panelists, and we'd love to hear. So first of all, if you'd be kind enough, each of you, to introduce yourselves, and if we could start with Taiwo, just to say a little bit about your organisation and your role in the project.
Hi everyone, my name is Taiwo Oluwati, originally from Nigeria, but I've lived in UK now since 2005. I'm a fashion designer. I also founder of African Caribbean Autism Family Support Group. I support family living with special needs and the youth as well. So that's just a bit about me. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us, Taiwo. And Taiwo's joining us from the Charter building, which is the Abingdon hub space in South Oxfordshire. And Rana, would you say a quick hello and tell us a little bit about your organisation?
Yes, hello, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Rana Ibrahim. I'm from Iraq originally, moved to the UK in 2003, and based in Oxford in the Source. I'm archaeologist and artist. So we have a group of Iraqi women art and war, CIC, and we based in Source. We're doing a lot of art and exhibition, and we have a lot of activity as well. So the Source is an amazing place for us. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. And Emily, do you want to say a quick hello and introduce Meanwhile Space, which I'm sure will be familiar to many?
Sure. Hello, Emily Bowen, Director of Meanwhile Space. We do very similar work in very similar fields since 2009, bringing empty space, buildings and sites into use for community benefit, working with local communities to decide what they are and to co-design the process, and we go on to operate them as well. But I was very lucky to be involved from the very beginning with Andy on the project board and just supporting this project to find its way in the very early days. It's such an ambitious, interesting project to be involved with. It was really great to see it grow and flourish as it did.
Thanks, Emily. Yeah, great to have you here, and we've very much been following in your footsteps. I think you're celebrating 15 years this year, aren't you? So we're still a young sibling by comparison. And Alex, do you want to say a few words about your role in the programme?
Yes, hello, I'm Alex. I am one of the Makespace team. I joined at the start within the sort of recruitment drive for the programme. As Andy said, we had 3 members of staff before, and sort of we've grown within that programme. And my role was as the community's delivery manager. So it was speaking to lots of the applicants and understanding what their needs were and trying to find out how we could best support them as part of the programme. And I was sort of interested in this because I previously come from theatre, sort of managing spaces at Oxford Playhouse, but also in London, and was interested in how we could provide more affordable workspaces and artist rehearsal spaces. So that's why sort of I applied originally, and within that, I've hopefully been speaking to lots of the organisations about how we can find sort of the spaces which are financially, socially and physically accessible for everyone, and trying to support people with the grants or the sort of business modelling to support their organisation to grow within the sort of temporary Meanwhile space.
Thanks, Alex. And Neil, do you want to introduce yourself, say a few words about your role in the programme.
Thank you. Lovely to be here this afternoon with everybody. My background has been as a chartered surveyor, RICS surveyor, commercial property agent. So I kind of understand the tensions between kind of stakeholders, landlords, property occupiers, potential occupiers. I work a lot on my own, but I love to collaborate with other groups and places and organisations. So I was delighted to team up with Makespace when this project kicked off, when it did, and sort of bring into play my local Oxfordshire knowledge of potential property that might be suitable for the project, particularly key to work on a regenerative agenda, really, which is what I like to do, and having worked with other councils and business improvement districts in the area with some initiatives, pop-up shop projects, other placemaking initiatives, it was a natural fit to work on this project. So appreciative of being kind of warmly welcomed into the organisation.
Yeah, Neil's very humble. I don't think the programme would have been possible without his kind of local knowledge and trusted relationships with different parts of the ecosystem, particularly the landlords. So has gathered a few battle scars during that process in terms of having to look at some of those 350 plus vacant buildings that we were trying to unlock. And Bex, do you want to introduce yourself and your kind of role in the ecosystem, as it were?
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I'm Bex. I'm from a national movement and cross-sector collaboration called Platform Places. We emerged out of a series of conversations in lockdown between private landlords, community organisations and operators like Makespace, and councils. And we came together around this challenge of how can we unlock more town centre buildings for locally led, purpose-driven organisations. And that was my personal experience running social enterprises. The struggle was real to try and access affordable properties that was also secure long term. So now we, very much inspired by the Meanwhile in Oxfordshire programme, we support new and existing community-led approaches to property in town centres, so we can unlock more spaces for these amazing ideas and businesses that help us live affordably and sustainably and together. And Andy's part of the steering group. We're very much hoping to shape this movement together in a way that unlocks barriers for more programs and partnerships like this to happen, whether funding, policy, networks, or otherwise. Thanks for having me.
Really great to have you here. Thanks, Bex. You've been and Platform Places has been a sort of terrific champion, a kind of steward, and doing amazing work in sort of connecting different organisations together to help share learnings and ensure that we learn from our mistakes and try and move forward together. Fabulous. So just diving straight into the questions then, and I think most keen to start off with the impact and the experience from the resident perspective, because as we were saying, really that's what this is all about. And so I wonder if, Taiwo, we could start with yourself, and just if you'd like to say a little bit just about how important the space has been for you in developing your idea and your initiative, and what's been the impact so far.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I started my journey from home. I've been doing my sewing thing just for people because I train as a fashion designer back home. But of course, I have an autistic daughter who needs full time, my attention. So I've been looking after her. She next month she'll be 24. So that time when she was growing up, she was very hyper, and there wasn't support. There wasn't not much we can do really, apart from being there for her. And also I've been doing my sewing in the house. So she's now grown up, and while I was being busy doing my sewing in the house, I always wanted a shop to be able to do that while I look after my daughter, because I know I can't go to work. If I go to work, every now and then I'll just be receiving a phone call to pick her up and something happened and all of that. So I looked out to Oxford. I've been an area, it was too much, the price, and also you have to pay like 3 months hand before I can start. And I thought, there's no way I can do that. So I had to leave. I just closed the chapter of looking for a shop, you know. But then, of course, along the way, I met some women who were having their challenge, special needs at the same time as a client. So, and I realized a part of my time I was spending to be on the phone call with them, just to talk to them and encourage them, just because I've been there and I know what it's like. And then whenever I go to morning session, morning coffee with other, you know, diversity, it's not, I can't relate with them. So I find it difficult to actually go out for any activities, no social life. Basically, my life is about inside, just in. So I called those ladies, but 6 of them, and I asked them if it's okay if we can just set up our own little group, because you are going through what you're going through. And because of my experience, I'm being able to help you. We might as well meet up on regular basis and we pass experience together, share ideas, do things together, go out together. So we communicate together instead of me being by myself, you being by yourself. So everybody was thought that was a good idea, because we haven't found something like that for African Caribbean so far within our community. So I set up the group in 2018. And every month, every last Friday of the month, we'll be meeting before the COVID. So when the COVID hit now, we couldn't meet again. So then I thought, now we are getting more that we're free to go out again. Can we do something else? I told my sister, Dr. Diane, like, we need a community space that we can use to be meeting on a regular basis. Perhaps I want to continue with my sewing business and it's been difficult. So we've been looking for a space as well within this local area. I didn't want to go to Oxford this time around. So along the way, she called me to say, oh, there's a space she's going to visit in Abingdon, because that time she was working for MakeSpace, she was working with MakeSpace, and MakeSpace are going to set up a place in Abingdon if I would love to come. And I thought, okay, let me go with you. So we came to MakeSpace Abingdon, and we were visiting the room and all of that. And so when we opened that room, I was like, wow, this place is like exactly what I wanted. The reason being, even though it's on the 3rd floor, it's safe for me. It's safe for my daughter, because I know everywhere I go, she comes with me. I wouldn't want like a working place on the ground floor, because she can easily distract and just run out or do stuff like that. But because of 3rd floor, and people were just coming, how do you think this is good for you? And I said, this is my needs. It's anything too suitable for whatever I go and do. I always think about her. If it's good for her, then it's good for us. So I said, it's good. What will we do is make this place, I said, you know, comfortable for her. She asked for TV. We have TV. She asked for a sofa. We have so anything she wanted. Anyway, we put in place for her. And I know that we encourage others as well. I just make the place comfortable for everybody, and it's always, you know, welcoming place for them. In terms of my activities as well with helping my group, I went to the lounge. There's a big lounge in the back here. Oh my God. And I was like, what an amazing opportunity. 2 for the price of 1. Because if I had to go and rent a community hall, of course you'll be paying. But here we're having it for free while I do my thing. So because of that opportunity that I have in this MakeSpace, that make things happen for me and my community, you know, group, we were able to set up Afro Dance Fitness in here. Also, they gave us opportunity to use the source in Oxford as well for our Afro dance, which we're using. We're able to set up a youth meet together, the youth as well. They're coming because I'm supporting their parents. I'm also supporting the youth. There are a lot of activities these children are coming here to do. In this office where I am, it's a small one that I rented just because of my daughter. She's she's gonna be 24 and she's nothing she could be doing out there at the moment. So basically she's with me. And I realized I've taught her to sew, but she doesn't want to sew. I have to be doing different things with her to find out what is it she wants to do. I realized she wants to be, and she was doing like a rhinestone t-shirt. So in here we are creating a rhinestone t-shirt where I am. Also, we are creating some activities, like now we have the canvas made of cover with wasp print materials. We do this here as well. As well, we do crafts, a lot of crafts. We do wall decoration, and the leftover of the materials, the wasp print material that I used to sew with, we've been using those ones to create different things. While we do that, all other children, youth of my community, even they love, it's now becoming like a diversity thing. It's not just even us. Everybody, whenever we have a workshop, open space, I'll come out, take my heat press machine out to the lounge, and all the children with the family come and have a go with what we do here. So this place is really a fantastic environment for us, and it's safe. We got a feedback that, the dancing ladies give us feedback yesterday. After 60 session, she would give us feedback, and they be seeing our video. They realize this place is very, very safe. And next week, I'm having a woman with 2 sons, autistic, coming to join our group while the son will come and do something here. So we are not just here to play game. We are here to change life. We are here to impact other people. We are here to make things happen. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if not because of the opportunity and because of Make Space. And I thank Make Space for the opportunity. I even thank them because 4 months before I started here, I didn't even know how I'm going to, start, because we didn't plan for it, but they gave me opportunity to just move in, just make yourself comfortable. I didn't have to worry about the financial aspect of it, because they just said, you just stay, do what you can. And it's been over 2 years. It's been amazing time spending here. And every time we come here till 8 o'clock, we don't want to go home. I'll just stop here. Thank you so much. God bless you for allowing me to share.
Thanks so much, Taiwo. I think you communicate the kind of energy and enthusiasm and the heart that you bring to the space very clearly and convincingly. And it's been an absolute joy to work with you and see how you've been working with Dion, our community development worker in that space. And I think you've got live exhibitions going on at the moment, haven't you, for Art Weeks and various other events?
Yes.
So we'll follow up with attendees to share some of the links and details about the amazing work that you're doing. But thank you for that. And if we could now hand over to Rana, I think similar question really about, tell us a little bit more about how the space is working for you, what it's meant for the Iraqi Women of Art and War program, and what you're currently working on.
Oh, yes, thank you, Andy. And it's very inspirational. I love your story, and you are very inspiring for us as well. I think from our perspective as a group, when I started my project as a founder and the director of Iraqi Women Art and War was in 2018. And as professionally working with the museums, so to gather with the women, which is I mapped in Oxfordshire. We started with the Iraqi women first, and then we used to meet in the museum space when they can offer it to us like in kind to meet up once a week at least. So and doing some art and social interaction, and just actually for the idea of the Iraqi Women Art and War is supporting our mental health, especially after the way we came to the UK either as a refugee or forced immigrant or asylum seekers. So there is a different kind of stories we want to share. Of course, I started with my story. I always put myself forward with my story to encourage other women to start using the art, actually. So we don't say it directly to the people. We use the art or objects to tell people about women's stories, war stories, and we after peace, of course. So that's the journey started in 2018, moving around different museums, as my network is around gallery and museum to meet up. We get support from Museum of Oxford, Soldier Museum of Oxfordshire, other museum in University of Oxford. That's because my professional career around this. And then I get an email from Fabio last year, and I was really, when this email came to me, and I wasn't really sure what does this mean, make space Oxford. So when I met with him in the source in Oxford, in the center of Oxford, which is amazing. But it's quite hiding, so I wasn't really sure. That's in 2023, I think, 23 or 22. I can't remember when we met. But then start the journey, knowing more about your organization, Make Space Oxford, and being a residential. At the beginning, supporting by you, because I didn't have the grant and to rent and things. So it's all really kindly supported by your organization, and the space help us actually to feel like we coming to our second home, like from home to home. And we are meeting there weekly. We're using the workshop space to do some artwork, any skills related to the women. And actually the group now is open to other vulnerable women. So it's not only for Iraqi, so there is, they join us from different backgrounds. Women, we have the space, we have the space actually is including office for myself if I need to work, doing some work related to the IWAW, or also they have a small kitchen, and there is a toilet, and there is a workshop, and there is a small meeting room for a private meeting. So it's actually complete space for us, and also meeting other residential community with us. So it's not just like interacting more, and people get to know each other, and the women feel like is a space for them, and they are welcome to attend when they want. So we use it as an art exhibition. We use it as a fashion show. We did fashion show there. We exhibit Refugee Week exhibition there. So I'm very active as a collage artist. So we do a lot of collage, and also get involved with the OCVA because it's our neighbor, and Make Space, and we know more about other organizations through your the Make Space opportunity. I can't thank you enough for this, because our aim is to have a space for IWAW, a long-term space for a museum, as well as we cook. So we did have a cooking project for the pop-up cafe, but we want like a space for a museum and a cafe for Iraqi food, IWAW food, for long term. And that's the long-term goal. So we hope like you can open the door more for us for long term, to have our space to exhibit all the time, and people get to know what is women's rights and what is our story and why we're here and we're still alive, to ask us. Honestly, it's all the story about war and women, and how we are still women struggling, because that's the message I'm trying to use this project to highlight, and to give opportunity for community groups and local people, residents, to come and talk to us, not to feel like there is a barrier between us, and the art is the bridge actually between, and the food. So it's all international language we have with you guys. Yeah, so thank you very much for everything. I hope I was clear.
Thank you, Rana. Yeah, very clear. And again, it's just it's just so clear when it comes, the words come through yourselves as to the impact the space has had on you, but also the impact you've had on the space and the surrounding network. And it was a real privilege when you ran that event the other week with the Creators of Peace and the Museum of Oxford, and you've now got permanent artworks right in the city centre, in the town hall, in the Museum of Oxford, which is just up the road from your hub space. You can see that it's not just about the space that you have in the source hub, but it's about how you're taking up space and animating spaces right the way across the city, which is really, really inspiring. Now, it's so wonderful to hear about these organisations that have been building capacity with Make Space over the last couple of years, but it hasn't been a straightforward or linear path. And I wonder if we turn to Neil and then perhaps to Alex to just kind of give a bit of a reflection on the challenges of unlocking the spaces. I mentioned the hundreds that we looked at, and we reanimated 28, which we're immensely proud of, but it's a tiny proportion. So I don't know if you want to offer a few reflections on the match between organisations needing space and the spaces that we were able to unlock.
Yeah, shall I start?
Yeah,
I think probably I'm looking through rose-coloured spectacles now with this, sort of perhaps not thinking back too deeply as to how it was at the time. But I think one of the points that has been helpful is the variety of types of spaces that we were able to look at for the project. So perhaps initially it was thought of as a regeneration of high streets, which it was and is to an extent, but we were able to also look at town and city centre office buildings, some sort of edge of town neighbourhood type community buildings as well. So we were able to bring forward a variety of types of spaces, some solo spaces for organisations to be the kind of only occupier of, but also spaces within larger premises. So the ability for organisations to share spaces, perhaps via a licence agreement with others, and benefit from that sort of community feel. So I think that the variety of spaces that the project was allowed to include was a really, really positive help. And we were able to sort of work through our existing kind of contacts really across the county, which is really important. So some of the spaces were owned by local authorities, county council, district councils who were involved in property ownership in across the towns. So that was really good, as well as some partners that we work with, housing associations, for instance, that own some commercial properties, as well as including some private sector landlords as well. So yeah, I think that variety was good, but it was tricky, and finding landlords that we felt that we were able to kind of have a partnership with going forward. I think that was the key, really, identifying those that would work. And the final just reflection really is the point that the project was, sometimes we think of Meanwhile as quite short term. A lot of the leases were of quite considerable length, numbers of years, and that's, I think, a real positive of the project. So, there was a lease of at least 10 years in one instance, and a lot of them were up to 3 to 5 years or more. So really, really helpful that enabling the project to continue.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, Alex, build on that perhaps more from the, you were meeting with these hundreds of organisations that applied to the programme. So
yeah, no, I mean, it was, for me, it was a really rewarding aspect of the job, just hearing, the likes of Tara and Rana's stories of what they wanted to do and how then we could help to do that. One of the challenges was sort of managing that tension. So Tyrell was a case of doing that, seeing the space before I think we'd even done any work on the building, and going, right, well, can you imagine this? This is going to happen within the next 6 or so months. How do we sort of manage that tension between like when things are going to happen and what it actually ends up being, and sort of going on that journey with Makespace, going on that journey with the resident, as well as sort of the resident going on that with Makespace and going, we think it's going to look a little bit like this, and these are what we're going to try and achieve, but we're not too sure. And at the time the programme launched, the council sort of publicised the programme, which was great. But at that time we hadn't sort of started lots of the engagement work and scoping work of looking at these 400 plus buildings. So we didn't have a physical lease on any spaces. So that one of the tensions was managing the timelines within such a limited programme. Also, just in terms of the occupiers, we developed a fair rental model throughout, but due to wanting to try and build an inclusive economy and support spaces at an affordable rate, with the sort of making buildings work, which are quite an expensive endeavour. It was sort of trying to weigh up those tensions and try and make something which is a fair rent. And one of the ways that we also did that was applying for separate grant funding to support either rent support with, I think how Rana and Tyler said at the start of paying very little at the start and then that going gradually increasing up, or whether it would be fit out grants which was generally with solo occupancy spaces of people going into that space. What essential things do they need? Is it a POS system? Is it some bookshelves? Is it sort of a display cabinet? So yeah, it was trying to find what tools can we provide, or what can we unlock to enable these communities to develop and come into our space, and within the program build capacity. And that takes time, and capital is fantastic that it enabled to do that, but without also the sort of grant support or support organizations' revenue, it would be more transformative, arguably, if it could also support organizations going into the building with supporting their revenue costs over the first year. I think that would be one of the key learnings that would try to encourage in a future program. But yeah, I think my main takeaway is sort of that managing the tension, and things always take longer than you expect. And I think together with Neil and my previous colleague Emma, it was trying to manage where these things are going to be, scaling from Makespace Oxford, which was principally really one building in the centre of Oxford, to a Makespace Oxfordshire, or a Meanwhile Oxfordshire programme, which was this 28 buildings across the county, which was a fair mean feat.
Thanks, Alex. Yes, indeed. And I think, yeah, that if you dip into the report, you can see there front and centre, the first key learning, I think, was that how to manage great expectations, and how much expectation was loaded onto what is a relatively modest size programme when there were so many challenges on the high street because of the impacts of COVID. Emily, you were there kind of right at the start. We brought you on board to say, can you help us? You've done this kind of thing before. You've been, you've been around quite a bit longer than we have and operated at different scales. So how could you steward us through this process? And we were having some challenging conversations at the start about how to manage those expectations and actually design to execute the programme. So looking back now, what are your thoughts on that that connection or that match between how we talked about and how we expected the programme would unfold and how it inevitably did?
I think that it's important to remember that time was the Christmas lockdown, where none of us could have Christmas with anyone. You were busy writing that very complicated and long-winded proposal over, in a very short period of time. Over that period, we didn't actually know anything. We didn't know what the world was going to be like once it opened back up again. There were lots of assumptions, some of which have come true and some of which haven't, and so it was guesswork. Really was a lot of guesswork, educated guesswork. Learning from a lot of Meanwhile Space's mistakes was really my role. Like, how can I come and share some of the lessons of things that we've tried and done wrong, and so that you can have the best chance of making the best go of it and making the best choices with that money that you had. And it was such a bold project, and amazingly so. Like, you really want these ambitious, bold projects to try to do something that seems really hard and seems really impossible, but really demonstrates, you aim for the stars and you might hit somewhere in the middle. And that's kind of where we were coming at it from, wasn't it? And it's, you want stuff like this. You want everybody to be bought in and excited by the ambition. But really, it was quite a terrifying ambition to originally, I think it was to do 50 properties in a year. Now, at this point, we've been running just over 10 years and we've done 70 in 10 years. And that was considered quite a lot. So 50 in 1 year was mad, frankly. Like it was mad, but it was the target set by government, and the council and the LEP had gone for that, and that was brilliant that they believed that this was possible and they were excited by that opportunity. But those constraints were put on this project by people that had never delivered anything on the ground. And so trying to navigate that and understand that and figure out how to manage that risk and opportunity was a lot of what we were kind of, I mean, I think it's fair to say rabbits in the headlights at the beginning, like sort of, you know, trying to figure out how to make that work as best possible. Really, it was a 5-year project that they wanted delivered in a year. So how did we get the most impact from that money, put the least amount of risk that was sort of being pushed on to MakeSpace? You know, how did you manage that so that it didn't kind of break everybody? And I think, you know, you guys have done an amazing job from that.
With a few battle scars and adjustments in our own expectations for sure, because but yeah, it really was it's hard to remember now, you know, what an unprecedented time it was, and we couldn't even meet physically to talk about how to deliver the program. And yeah, this was a place-based project, and we couldn't go to the places we wanted to go to. So it's it is, you know, with rose-tinted spectacles, as Neil said, it's hard to remember just quite how challenging that was. Bex, you've been supporting organisations up and down the country now and convening different partnerships with different stakeholders. You know, how does this compare to some of the other areas in which you've been supporting and working, and what lessons do you think we can draw from the programme design? What would we, you know, you'd want to see taken forward, and what perhaps did we want to leave behind?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of inspiration in the numbers, in what you managed to achieve in such a short space of time, even though we don't recommend to anyone that they try and replicate that from almost a standing start to go from 1 to 28 buildings in 18 months. But what we are absolutely encouraging people to replicate is the combination of different stakeholders that have been in this partnership and are at the table. So absolutely, what we're trying to seed in different places, from Bristol to Newcastle to Sheffield, Liverpool, London, places in between, is this property partnership where you have at the table the community leaders and operators, the council, the representation from the private owner sector, whether it's brilliant local agents like Neil who understand the language and can phone up their contacts and make use of their address book and trust with those owners, as well as having funders at the table where possible. So that kind of relationship building is what we see as really critical, and really trying to champion that approach elsewhere. And I'm pleased to say that actually the government, Westminster, listened when we were advising on how they deliver their High Street Accelerator programme in 10 different towns. And that's the model that they are requesting and requiring is in place before they receive funding from the government. So this model of those stakeholders at the table is really starting to get traction across the sector. I think one thing that shouldn't be replicated, that you've highlighted in the report and what you've been sharing, is the lack of revenue funding at the beginning to pay the team and salaries to do the organising, to do the feasibility studies, to do the conversations with landlords to unlock the buildings. Because without that money for the team, there's way too much risk on the local operator. And and it's really hard to do that work without a kind of view of, oh, look, we've got 5 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years of core funding for these salaries, and we know we're stable, so we can build this. We can build this from here with this stability. And I think you've done an incredible job to secure that funds as you've gone along, but I know that was really difficult. So yeah, that's absolutely what we're trying to now lobby foundations, philanthropic funders, government to do, is to put in that revenue money, that pre-development money for these types of initiatives to take off elsewhere.
Thanks, Bex. Yeah, just pick up on a couple of those key points. I think Neil's quoted in the report as talking about that crucial role that doesn't yet exist in most town centres or in most local authority or regional levels, which is this kind of local place advocate, where it's someone who's actually embedded in the local area, much the same as Neil and other kind of key agents are, but is acting for and on behalf of local communities and the place and the high streets at large, rather than for any special interest group or private business. And you see that it's a real missing part of the ecosystem. And I don't know if you want to sort of reflect on that, Neil, and perhaps also Emily, in talking about the risk question that Bex was drawing on there, because I know that's something that you're experiencing time and again when working with different local authorities up and down the country.
I think it kind of reinforces the point that tends to be made a lot by place management kind of professionals or others working in towns, is that sort of partnership approach, so bringing together the various kind of champions for a place, so that that there's various people kind of inputting and seeing what needs to happen. So I think that's probably what springs to mind as the best way of kind of championing opportunities, available spaces. It's all about raising the bar, isn't it? The aspirational bar of a place. So it's not sinking down to the lowest common denominator, but kind of advocating for what a place needs most in terms of missing kind of occupiers, encouraging that kind of circular economy, encouraging those that are perhaps normally excluded from having a voice. So yeah, bringing those players together, and it's identifying who's the coordinator for that role, really, and bringing those partnerships together. And that's sometimes challenging. It will vary place to place, but someone putting themselves forward to be the kind of overall advocate of a place and bring together the different people and stakeholders. Yeah.
And if I just put in on that risk thing, I mean, this is something I talk about an awful lot, because these kind of projects are very hard. They're very challenging to do. There's a reason those buildings are empty a lot of the time. And what you get is government or local authorities that want to see this kind of activity in their towns, in their high streets. And they rely on partnerships effectively with third sector organisations or freelancers or individual small organisations that are on the ground, as Neil was describing, in the place, loving that place, knowing those people, having those relationships. But actually they don't, and increasingly so, they don't want to take the risk of any of that. And they don't want to take the risk of paying for any of that a lot of the time. But to be able to do that coordination to get these projects to happen requires a huge amount of coordination. So that risk gets pushed onto the very small social enterprises often, and causes severe financial hardship. And that is just not okay. And actually, really, this tool of activating the high streets is proven to work again and again and again. It's the mechanics and the power dynamic between those large public sector organisations and the very small on-the-ground organisations that make it happen. There needs to be much more trust, and there needs to be a reworking of that power dynamic for this to ever work, because the constant pushing of that risk, both resourcing and financial risk, onto small organisations just puts them under too much pressure.
Very well said, yeah. And maybe bringing it back down to the organisations themselves who are taking that risk on unlocking a space for the first time or trying to animate a space for the first time. I wonder if Rana or Taiwo, you wanted to kind of offer up any reflections or advice for an organisation that is thinking about taking on space themselves for the first time, and what you've learned from that process.
Okay, thank you. Yes, with my experience in starting this, because I never thought I could be able to set up a business like this. With the support I received from MakeSpace, including the members here, all the members are very kind and gentle, even with the fact that I have a special needs daughter who has to be with me all the time. And they're so kind. Sometimes she will just go off to them and talk to them, and they are always looking out for her as well. I'm not thinking, I wouldn't say I think. It's a good idea, it's a good opportunity. What you are doing here is amazing. You are really, really impacting life. You are changing lives. There's so much life I've been able to impart, to change, just because of the opportunity given to me, because I have one woman setting up the same thing in Reading, another one in Kent. One of my group moved to Kent, and she's starting a group there. And this is my vision after attending the marmalade that you invited me to last time. I had this just before I woke up in the morning. It feel like a dream to me, but it wasn't a dream, it's a vision. I see, because my group is called African Caribbean Autism Family Support Group. In a short, we call it ACAFS. I see ACAFS home, like a big home for all these special needs, and to just come like a respite home. In that home, there is activities, there is gym, there is pool, there is a lot of activities working going on in there. And I woke up, I thought, good Lord, you know, this is my next project for Make Space. Please, you haven't finished with me yet. And whenever you see that home that can belong to ACAFS, please put it in your, you know, in your diary. There is so much things that we have vision to have. As we have this space, as I came here, I started seeing so many things happening for our community here. As a matter of fact, I told you yesterday, guess what? I'm going to be buying musical instruments for our youth in the lounge there to come and express themselves through music, not just dance, you see. So there is opportunity everywhere. The thing is, if you're thinking something in your mind to do, just start anyway. Don't think about how it's going to happen, who is going to come, who is going to support you, who is behind you. If you're alone, for you to prosper in life, it's in starting. When you step up forward, the next step, you see the door opening and you'll be wondering, am I dreaming? It's like that for me. And I want to encourage anybody listening for this video, whatever it is you have, imagine in your mind, it means God give that for you to imagine it, because it's ready to be birthed. That was last week. I started thinking about musical instruments, and I thought I need to be saying this so that I can come to life. So seeing ACAFS home, it didn't just come to my mind. It comes so that will be your next project for us, please. So see, opportunity is there. What like you put this thing together during the COVID. I'm sure you don't even know how this is going to happen, but you did it anyway. And look what life you are changing right now and what you are still going to change. And you can imagine what's going to come in the next few years down the line. I'm so grateful to be part of it. And I want you to continue doing what you are doing. That is something that I'm sure a lot of people, even people are still wondering when they come to me, to my shop, they were like, how do you do this? How are you doing it? Are you sure you want to continue? I say, you know what? People don't believe in us, especially all the diversity. People don't believe that we don't believe in ourselves, that we can do things. But you are making this thing happening for us just because you wake up one day, you say you're going to be resuscitating the abandoned building. And thank you so much for not wave the idea away, because waving the idea away would have damaged so many things potential that the thing that is happening right now. And thank you so much. And I want to encourage anybody, anybody listening, if there is anything happening you're thinking about, you're imagining in your mind, please make it happen, because somebody is waiting on that thing that is you are thinking about. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come today and to share a bit of myself. I appreciate you so much, and I celebrate every one of you here. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tyrell. I'll say, Rana, did you want to add? That's a beautiful note as we draw towards the end. But Rana, did you want to have a final comment?
Yeah, I mean, I echo Tyrell and everything she said. I think it's really worth to try the opportunity to engage with Make Space organization wherever you are based, because it's very wide. As I said before, it was really good for me to say yes to the to start, using the space of the source. Otherwise, I will not be able to really establish further, like being an organization, CIC, which is a community interest company, using the address in the source. And this is also a step up for IWAW, and also, as I said before, it's like a home for us and a space to work and to meet up and meeting beautiful, wonderful people through your organization. And we work together anyway. And I'm never going to leave you. And as I said, so we want to carry on with you. Hopefully, you will find a space for us for our museum and restaurant for IWAW in future. So please do come and talk to us. Anyone who want to know more, visit the source. We have exhibitions, we have lots of activity. We do Arabic writing, we do other skills we want to share. And also, I just want to invite you guys all in our last 2 days in the Art Week exhibition in Old Fire Station, if you want to visit before this Saturday, and Soldier Museum of Oxfordshire in Woodstock for Art Week exhibition as well. And thank you again, Andy, everyone, Ray, and everyone here. It's really nice to meet you all and learn from you guys. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Rana. I know we're over time, so I would happily carry on this conversation all afternoon, but I know people have work and other commitments to get to. So I think we'll draw it to a close there. And if we haven't managed to get to your questions, then we'll happily keep in touch. Drop us a line at info@makespaceoxford.org or on our social media accounts. There's the opportunity to continue the conversation. Bex and I will be at the Stir to Action New Economy Festival on the 10th and 11th of July in Bristol. Emily and Meanwhile Space are very active on a whole range of different projects, and there's lots of ways to keep in touch with them as well. But just to say thank you, I think, Rana and Taiwo, you've really sort of demonstrated living proof of that idea that all the skills, all the ideas, all the resources that are needed for great places to thrive already exist, and they just need the right conditions to be nurtured and given the opportunity to develop. So yeah, thank you all for joining us, and I think we'll close it out there.